Hey, we're here. How cool. You're here. I read this poem 2 years ago at Proclaiming Pride. Amy says every year. We'll see. I have to say, I don't think that I, even 2 years ago, could conceptualize how free and peaceful I felt walking into this pride for like the first time in my life. I just couldn't conceptualize like being in a church where I could just like fully be myself. So I'm very grateful to be here and very grateful for all of you. So this is Rainbow God. Abram and Sarai, in a sweep of grace, hear God say, "Hey, let's leave." And God didn't give a where, just gave a not here anymore. Abram and Sarai followed that voice into the darkness, not knowing where they'd end up, just knowing they had to go. And miracles happen with their bodies, and God changes their names on the way. Noah followed God's voice out of solid ground, into a boat, onto a mountain, had to deal with the hurling insults of the crowd who hadn't heard God's voice with him while he built what God, pulsing inside him, led him to build. But isn't Noah glad he trusted? Because God built a rainbow at the end of that flood, promising to never cover the earth in judgment again. Jesus said, "My mother and my brothers are with me doing the Father's work." He pointed away from his biological family to the ones listening and following the message of the good news. I hear this and I see a chosen family. The ones who are with you doing the work of justice are your family, and Jesus chose his family too. Saul of Tarsus, a celebrated saint, swallowed his pride in violence as religious duty to follow the path of inclusion inside the gospel, a group of people no one was quite sure about including. I make a joke to my roommate about how my name change is my own Saul to Paul conversion. God points to me, asks, "Why are you persecuting me?" Points to the rainbow crumpled up in the corner of my heart. Paul was persecuting Christians as a default function of his devoutness. They are persecuting us as a default function of their devoutness. I was persecuting me as a default function of my devoutness, but at any moment God comes in the form of a blinding light to ask why. Why are you persecuting me? Imagine the celebrated saints being swallowed in light that erases their passion for violence so that we never have to swallow our pride again. A few of us know about a life like this. Sometimes your given name just doesn't sit right. Jesus called himself several names as he walked the earth, but rarely the one his mother gave him. So if we change our names, it's not because we don't know ourselves. It's because we know ourselves enough to expand like God expands. I joke to a friend that my name change is my Saul of Tarsus conversion. Look at God beckoning home to a home you don't know of yet. God renames themselves through scripture. God who calls out of the familiar. God, the inhabitor of the stigmatized. God knows that names are just a storytelling function. Metaphors in the poem God's creating out of creation itself. We know enough to know that as we change, we are just the poem continuing. And God yields himself to the pen of humanity yet again. God, we will never write your full scripture. Queers, we will never write your full depth, the full rainbow of what it is to just be different in the way you grew, to stand out because you are God with a different name, in a different form. Queers, the spirit that animates you is the one that animated Abraham and Sarah. Go where you haven't gone, be who you are. You and miracles, the spirit that allowed Jesus to walk unswayed by his home's misunderstanding of everything he was. Let it sink in. God is doing something with you you can't do for yourself. Let it sink in. The queer path is God's path too. Let it sink in. You are loved. At your gayest, kinkiest, at your most dysphoric, at you having no desire for sex, at your horniest, at your proudest, as you the most femme, as you accepting trans masculinity as a godly calling, as you being the most disobedient to everything that makes them feel normal. God is many-gendered. Humanity is many-gendered, and love is every color and form. You don't have to obey the black and white. You can obey the rainbow. Humanity as alive and diverse as nature itself, home in the colors, God with the rainbow, promised to never flood the earth with judgment again. So I think it's safe to say the judgment you feel flooded with is not from God. And in the spaces, we don't even know how to name that. Name them. Continue to write this holy book, a book of names, all God's names, this genealogy of God, passing on God, generation to generation. This generation will see God manifested through rainbow people, unraveling the world the way God always does. It has never been about power. It has never been about us getting our way. It has always been about us fully loved and surrendered to the God who might invite us somewhere we've never been before. A God so wrapped in our DNA that we can't get them out no matter how much they say queer is unholy. A God so invested in creation that the world they made recreates themselves daily. A daily dose of salvation, meaning love really gets to be just that. Love, even if it means changing your name as evidence of God in you, rewriting what you thought it meant to be human. This is the queer journey. Accepting yourself when the powers that be can't and won't. Obedient to this unfolding, even unto death. God, the origin story. God, the peace that surpasses their misunderstanding. This is Holy Communion. Recognizing all of God sitting at the table using their chosen names. We have been here all along. And now we just have names to recognize it, just like Abraham and Sarah and Peter. God making new creations of us. God is the rainbow I'm wrapped up in. And God showed me how to love me, this rainbow body, all the queer saints singing into me. You have never been separate from love. God, the voice that calls back to you in your wilderness when all you can think of is, I don't know what I am, I just know it's not this. You knowing all there is forward, but not knowing how it is you'll change. God, the stone the builders rejected that became the chief cornerstone. God, you continually renaming yourself. God, the hen yearning to gather up her chicks. God, the writer of these words, the author of this vision, do not call unclean what I have called clean. Disavowing all the violence they'll do in his dead name. Calling themselves by another, the rainbow floods the earth in nonviolence. Floods the earth with, hey, God is writing this story. And it's a lot more colorful than we thought it was. Thank you.